I think it really speaks to some of the things that stay the same, that we have, kind of been in this technology world for the better part of 25, 30 years, and yet getting sound to work
It's
was a
insane.
significant issue.
I mean, two grown-ups, we've been doing this for a long time, right? And getting the speaker to work, it was touch and go.
Yeah, it's the little things.
You and I had a conversation 2 weeks ago, something you had, and I just want to open with this because it was one of these things that, and I, I think you probably do too, but I have kind of a high bar for, a lot of just techno babble and just white papers and stuff. You hit me with something as it regards to Gen AI. We were talking about where's all this going in terms of guardrails, governance, and stuff like that. And, you have this more simply and elegantly than anybody I've spoken with. And I've spoken with a lot of people, a lot of dinners, a lot of events, and all this stuff. You have some really interesting thoughts on how to very simply put some governance thoughts together and also some just big guardrails. I wonder if you could just talk to that.
Yeah, and you know, one man's opinion, as always. I state that before, but we've. I guess one of the benefits of being old and being in this space for so long is that we've sort of lived through a lot of the transformative pieces of it. I remember sending out my nightly packets over the internet when I would close down the New Balance factory store, right? And so you have sort of various stages of maturity. Back in the days, of the original internet, I think we had a lot of organic growth. It was very, very people-led because there were no playbooks. Most of the early, adopters were like IRC board moderators and users and that kind of thing. And so, you had sort of this organic built-in nodality and this really, really organic, human governance model because it was just really, really a simple tool for communicating. Then we get into, sort of Web 1.0 and that becomes, some marketing and yada, yada, yada. And it goes on and it goes on. And now we have this sort of AI thing, which is, at least in terms of, sales and marketing, proliferating at an insane rate, and I think, and you and I talked about this. If you talk to people in the AI world, and I've got, as you said, I've got a whole team of developers that have sort of been testing this out. This is not a ready for prime time solution. It does some things very well, mostly related to sort of what I would call hard data and repeatable, tasks and that sort of thing, more insulated sort of framing. But it's not intelligent. It doesn't string together, expanded concepts into real strategic or environmental landscapes. And it doesn't decision, in a way that humans decision, quite frankly. And part of that, is that it's new. And part of that is that, we have access to so many invisible data sets and, microstimuli that it doesn't have, and we don't even know that we have most of the time. So, there's a sort of a fundamental gap there. But I think, a couple things. So you were talking about the government side. On the governance side, how do we, as, I want to say owners of the technology, right? The shepherds of the technology.
Yeah, probably.
How do we teach it to be good,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term?
And this goes back to the old Google do no evil, right? Like you're kind of, is
Right.
that how you're thinking of this?
Yeah, and it's funny because I was actually talking, about this idea to the boys the other day, and I was like, I wonder if I just asked it right now. So one of the things, I went to Holy Cross, and it's a Jesuit institution, but we studied all the religions because, the Jesuits or
League,
whatever you want to
right?
call them. What's that?
Your Patriot League, Holy Cross.
Patriot League. That's right.
Patriot-
But one of the things that you learn is sort of like, whatever jacket you want to put on the thing, right? Most of the core fundamentals are the same. Whatever you want to call them, the 10 Commandments or the decrees or the laws or whatever it is, right? And so I literally just used the AI and I was like, hey, give me a morality structure, like a list of concepts that are consistent among most of the religions and cultures in the world. And it took about, obviously, a half a second, and it came back with them, right? So, like if we, boil sort of the thinking in the language down to its simplest concepts, it could be something that would serve as a common compass for us to imbue AI with, that humans could understand and that the AI could understand. And then the feedback loop would sort of have this as a pillar. And so just in terms of like teaching it to be good, there isn't really any way for us to give it, a good mom and dad. It's too broadly distributed. The best thing that you can do is sort of say, here are the, just like you do if you send your kid to Sunday school or et cetera, you teach them the concepts. They have real world experiences. The adult in the room says, you did that right. You didn't do that right. That's not so great. They screw up. They learn from hard knocks, all the rest of that. But like, there's always some structure in place that essentially says, please don't do that. Don't do that again. If you do something bad again, we're going to do something to you.
And that goes
So
back
I think
time immemorial.
Right. Yeah, exactly right. And so I think that
Cavemen were basically saying, don't steal from the next caveman. Like that's kind of,
yeah, exactly.
and these are just universal truths.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the irony is that like this thing is learned on information that now the people are like, what, how did you get, I didn't tell you you could use this, but we are where we are. You know what I mean? And so I do think it's not going away. I think we both agree on that, right? I don't think that its morality should be exclusively profit motive.